people have kind of come out of the woodwork and realised, you know what, I can do this. And they realise that you don't have to be a professor in something. You can be an ordinary citizen, and if you see a pink elephant flying around your back garden and you want to do some sort of conservation for that pink elephant, who's to say you can't? And that's the whole crux of the project.
Hello, I'm Cathal Summers.
And I'm Deirdre Glenn.
Your Teagasc Sustainability Advisors. And you're welcome to the Teagasc Environment Edge podcast number 57, bringing you the latest information, science and opinion to improve farm sustainability. Have you a barn owl on your farm, and are you aware of the huge contribution they make to controlling rodents?
The founder of the Barn Owl Project, set up in 2019, John Carrig, joins us for a bit of an owl chat in part one of this two-part episode. John, you're very welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for the invite.
You and your colleagues are doing some fantastic work on the ground. Can you tell us a little bit about the Barn Owl Project?
Yeah, I suppose in around 2018, I was involved at that stage, I think, for about 3 years in studying peregrine falcons. And on top of that, I suppose I was a very keen interest in wildlife photography. I'd work with some of my friends, I suppose, in national parks and wildlife, providing footage and stuff for them for different publications, particularly Dr. Barry O'Donoghue for the Raptor protocol and stuff like that. And I don't know, I just got into a conversation one time with one of the guys, and he said, is there any wild animal you've never got a picture of? And the barn owl came up in conversation. And at that stage, I had kind of finished up with the peregrine falcons, and I suppose my passion would have been peregrine falcons, but it was kind of one of those things that it's a bird you can't really help. It's fly by and give you the middle feather, and it has no kind of no interest in your help. And I had looked into the numerous, like putting up nest sightings from big buildings and stuff in the cities and all this kind of stuff. But anyways, I suppose, make a long story short, I got talking to someone in National Parks and Wildlife, and that was the question that was posed to me. And when I said a barn owl, I suppose that just came into my head, like how much trouble they're in. So I went away and looked at the different publications and stuff, and I ended up anyway talking to our friends in the UK, which is the Barn Owl Trust, and got a small bit of training from them. And I suppose the interest took off from there. So I started out by, I suppose, making a few nest boxes, working with some local farmers that people I would have grown up with and stuff like that, and putting up nest boxes. And eventually I ended up meeting like-minded people. So at that stage I had a name for the project. I was working with a girl from Brazil at the time who was involved in falconry. She basically traveled the world, and she'd been involved in conservation projects, and that was kind of founding of it. I ended up then, I think, after knocking on a farmer's door one day, it was a woman called Claire Burke, said to me, well, you're the second person to call to my door in the last 2 weeks about barn owls, so you need to go down the road and talk to Danny. He's down the road, and we'll have a chat. So that was kind of foundational. I met Danny and said, look, I've set up this project. I'm looking for like-minded people. And we ended up running our first big project there in a place called Ballydugan, which is a dairy farm, 600 acres. Met the farmer, the person that was renting the land, and we ended up running the project. I think we put up 8 nest boxes. There was information on that site going back over 150 years, and there'd been no barn owls there. So we put an awful lot of work into it with the farmer, with Claire herself, and we had success. And that kind of pushed us on then to see, could we go for more sites? So we ended up, I think in the first year, it doesn't sound great for the environment, but we travelled in the West of Ireland 60,000 kilometres in 1 year, and we met over 240 farmers, and never had one single farmer say no, he wasn't interested. Some of them would say to you, what's that you're talking about? They had never seen. So we'd always use the antidote of, like, Friday evening, you're looking at Late Show, that bird that flies across the screen, that's a barn owl. And I know myself, but once you kind of got people involved, they took ownership of it on their own property, and they took off from there. So we kind of pushed on from there. I suppose over the last 3 years, we've got to meet all sorts of people, everyday people. We've given hundreds of talks, community talks, farming groups, schools, even down to, I suppose, part for inclusion policy would be like special needs schools, nursing homes, anybody we could talk to about it, it didn't matter whether it had an impact on the project. It was just about letting people see. And I think the big thing for us was maybe about a year and a half ago, we were doing a bit of training again with the Barnowl Trust and trying to be certified in some of the stuff we were doing. And they mentioned, would you get an owl? And we said, no, I'm kind of against keeping. They're not pets. They're not, and I don't like see animals in a cage and all this kind of stuff. But I think I remember one of the guys saying, like, you're going giving school talks. What happens when you talk to young kids? And to be honest, yeah, like they lose interest after about 5 minutes. So I think I was outvoted on that occasion, and we decided to apply for license. So the owl we would have got was a captive bred owl. It was never, going to be released. We got her, I think she was about five weeks old or something like that. So Ali, the girl that was involved at the time, ended up carrying her around in a little nest, showing her to everybody as a kind of to get her imprinted and stuff. And since that has happened, no matter what talk we go to, we mention, like, come along, you're going to meet the guys and you're going to meet Aaron, who's our owl. They turn up. They don't care about listening to us. They don't care about what we have to say, but they want to see what an owl looks like. And the impact has been massive for us, where we're like, I'm probably, depending on the time of the year, but you're probably getting 5-6 emails a day, people looking for talks. You're reporting in information and stuff. And at this time of the year, I suppose it's different. We're getting the rescue stuff, but it's just driven on from there. So we've different people doing different things in the project now. We've 8 board members who all form a function. They all have a say in the project and what way we go. We're not a charity. We don't even look for funding from government funding and stuff, because we're trying to set it out for volunteers and stuff. Eventually, maybe that might be the route we take. But so I suppose the way it's set out would be that we work with the farming community and tidy towns groups and stuff to try promote wildlife in their area, not just barn owls, but primarily barn owls. Then after that, we've a nesting box project going. We've rodenticide or rat poison kind of campaign and how we can make a difference with that. And then we have the community involvement. So we're trying to get ordinary people, I suppose, to take on board some projects. It's not necessarily barn owls, but it's some wildlife project that they feel they can make a difference on. And that's kind of, I suppose, the crux of the whole project.
John, do you think, was there much of an awareness among farmers and about owls, their habitats?
I would say not as much as you think. There's some, don't get me wrong, there's some, before we came along, I suppose the idea of the project, first of all, was to set up something that deals solely, we put barn owls up there on top. So we look, the call comes in, we deal with it, and that's it. And we do everything to do with barn owls. So rescue, rehabilitation, release. We do soft release. We have an amazing soft release manager. So we do everything to do with barn owls, and we didn't see that kind of happening. There was loads of different bits and pieces. So Birdwatch Ireland have done some amazing work over the years with barn owls, but I suppose they deal with all birds, and it because we were volunteers, but it allowed us to do a lot more, I suppose, visiting people. So I can remember in the early days, I met some amazing characters at the very start. Like you wouldn't believe some of the people I've met, and I'm talking about people that are probably some of my best friends now. I can remember you'd cold call people. I'd be driving on the road, I'd see an old castle, and I'd say, "There's a spot for a barn owl." In knock on the door and start talking to someone, and you end up being there for hours. So we've some amazing stories that way. So I don't believe that much awareness was out there. It is getting there now. Like, I suppose the whole barn owl project things, whether it's coming through other groups or through us, there's been a massive, I suppose, explosion of interest in the last 2 years, which is brilliant to see. And the more people that are involved, the better. And that doesn't, I would include long-eared owls and all sorts of, we try kind of cover everything. So when we do give a talk in a school, we don't just stick, I'll throw up photographs that I've taken of, like, there's pine marten squirrels, I'll just throw them into the mix, and we'll talk about problems they're facing the same as the barn owl is facing. We try and kind of cover the gambit of everything that could be on a farm that's useful to a farmer. Some of the stuff, sometimes you might get a negative response on the pine marten or whatever, but we try and kind of explain it in a certain way that, like, look, guys, you're having to use poison, but, like, on top of that, I suppose the pine marten is going to do that job for you as well. he is an asset. He is part of the whole cycle of life that's in wildlife and stuff. So I suppose, it definitely, I think when we started out, no, I don't believe it was people were that aware. Now I believe the awareness has gone up like, 3-4-fold. I'm not saying that's us. It's definitely not us. It's everyone seems to have kind of stepped their game up. More people have kind of come out of the woodwork and realized, you know what, I can do this. And they realize that you don't have to be a professor in something. You can be an ordinary citizen. And if you see a pink elephant flying around your back garden and you want to do some sort of conservation for that pink elephant, who's to say you can't? And that's the whole crux of the project,
It's a great attitude.
Yeah, there's loads of work. It's clear you're doing a huge amount of work and other people across the country. But going back to the actual barn owl itself, what's the fascination? Like, I suppose, what's the importance of having them in the countryside?
Yeah, I suppose the fascination in Ireland with barn owls, when you talk to people, really is the history, I suppose the Banshee, the screech, and stuff like that. And they're like, I suppose people look at them and think like, oh my God, they're a beautiful bird. And to be honest, like they're a dirty little bugger. Like if you try crawl through and put a chick back into a nest or a juvenile back into the nest, you won't be long realizing that they're not as clean as people think they are. But every time we go somewhere, we have Erin with us. They're like, oh my God, she's so soft, she's so white, she's so clean. But I think the history, the kind of folklore behind it, that Banshee, you can imagine, like if you maybe in the 50s coming home from the pub and deciding you're taking a shortcut through the field and you hear this screeching coming, like I can tell you, myself and Danny were out last year in South Tip, and we were doing a night survey at about 2:00 in the morning, believe it or not, where it's a site, we know there's barn owls, but you want to know is there chicks there, and it's a way you don't disturb the site, but you can stand outside of the castle or the building, you can hear them calling. So we decided, we were down there listening, we said, oh, this is brilliant, we can hear them. So taking the book, go on to the next site, and the female came in and let a big shriek out of her, and even though we knew what it was, it terrified me. It went through me for a shortcut, and Danny was the same. It was like, oh my God, I'm sorry we didn't get a recording of it. And then I suppose just what would show you the kind of community that we've built would be that I think we were heading out of that field, and my phone went, and I was like, this is 2:00 in the morning. It turned out to be one of these guys I've told you about that I visited his site. He lives in another castle, actually lives in the castle, rang me and said, you told me to ring you anytime. There's a barn owl on the ground. He's down on the ground outside the house. You told me anytime. So I was coming back from doing something with the cattle, and he's there. So we ended up heading down to, I think it was East Galway, to climb a ladder to put the owl back. So this is the kind of, there is a kind of great ownership and community thing there. But I think, I think that's the kind of, it's just, it's the mystique, it's the history, it's the fact that a lot of people haven't seen them. But yet, you can go onto a farmer's site and say, "Look, I'm here, and I'm wondering, you've an old building or you've trees around this. Could I have a look and see is there barn owls?" They tell you they're not there, and the amazement in their face when you come back and say, "Oh no, you have barn owls on the site." They tell you they haven't heard them or they haven't seen them, And I think, it's just one of those things. I think people, they think about the Banshee, they think about the history of it, and that seems to be not just Ireland, but I know we've talked to some of our counterparts in different countries. Ali, we talked to the guys in Brazil. I think they call them church owls in Brazil, and the kind of history behind them in some of the African countries as well. They call them ghost owls, and they think they're a bad omen. It just seems to be something that's kind of gone through history in different societies. But yeah, I think that's really what it is.
It's funny you mentioned the Late Late Show. We're programmed to see the barn owl every Friday evening on the Late Late Show, and you're from a photography background, and I'd say your head must be wrecked trying to get a picture of the barn owl, because I'm sick of looking at people on Twitter putting up lovely pictures of barn owls, and all I see is a little white flash going down the lane and never get a proper look at one.
Yeah, the problem I suppose we have with barn owls in Ireland is that we don't get them out in daylight hours in Ireland. So most of the footage and stuff you see would be, it's easy for me. I have an owl, so I can get her out and say, Erin, here, come get a picture. I can make it look like she hasn't got her little leggings on her and stuff. But we don't get them out in daylight hours in Ireland. And if you got a phone call to tell you you've an owl out in Ireland, we'd nearly always say it's sick. And I suppose the part of the reason that you don't get them out would be maybe we didn't have as many prey items for them to be out, and if they're out in daylight, you will find that they're harassed and chased after by every little bird in the place, big birds, small birds. We had an interesting one last year where a farmer sent us on footage of, he was driving the cows down through the farm, and we had boxes up on the farm. Now he was he was 100 meters away from the box, not a big deal, but he just heard a noise, and we turned around and it was a raven chasing the barn owl. And he pulled out his phone and it doubled back, so he managed to get footage of it, and the raven caught the barn owl and dragged it onto the ground. Now the barn owl just got back up again and went into one of the boxes. But that just kind of highlighted for us that I suppose that's part of the reason in Ireland we don't have it. We are getting more daylight prey in Ireland, so we have obviously a couple of invasive species at the minute. We have the greater white-toothed shrew, which is amazing news for the barn owl because they're spreading like wildfire. I think initially they were found in Tipperary in the 90s. Someone had brought them in accidentally, and the way they were found was by checking the barn owl pellet. So for anyone, I suppose, that doesn't know what a pellet is, the barn owl will eat a mouse or a shrew whole, so head first down, and then it digests everything it can digest. Stomach acid is weak, so it can't digest the fur or the bones, and once or twice a day it'll regurgitate a pellet, and it looks like about the size of your thumb and black in shape. And if you break that open, the black part is the fur, and inside you'll have all the bones of the small mammal it's eaten. So when someone checked those pellets in Tipperary, they found there was something unusual, and they went to have a look and see what that was, and I suppose in the books and stuff, and it turned out to be a greater white-toothed shrew. Now, we have a pygmy shrew in Ireland. That was in Tipperary. I believe there's very little signs of pygmy shrews left in Tipperary now at the minute because the greater white-toothed shrew is taken over, and they don't know why. Why that is. Is it carrying some virus like the grey squirrel and the red squirrel? Is it out competing them, or what the scenario is there? They don't really know. It's still being investigated. But it's been amazing news for the barn owl. Like, you can, any site that we go on to now that it's spread, as far as I'm concerned, I suppose that I'm aware of the greater white-toothed shrews in most counties in Ireland, but anywhere you can follow the path of the greater white-toothed shrew into any county, and the barn owl numbers are increasing all the time. But it's having a negative impact on the pygmy shrew. But another thing you'll know is if you go onto a site, you get the smell. There's this smell of the greater white-toothed shrew. It's like a musty smell of it. Stink. And if you go onto a site, I know if I go onto a site, I've often come home when I've been told, get out the back. I nearly have to strip off from my back garden and power hose myself down because it can get on your clothes, and it's quite. But it's kind of, we also have the bank fold that was brought in the 20s, not spreading as fast as but these are two extra, I suppose, prey items that the barn owl has in Ireland. It is kind of driving on the numbers to build the whole time.
Should we be reporting sightings, John? And then how do you record how many barn owls there are in the country, or owl population? Yeah,
so I suppose there's a number of ways you can do that. What you could do is, so generally we have a reporting system on our website. So generally what we would do is, if it's reporting to us and it comes from, Louth, we'll report to the guys up there who run their own group. It'll be up to Louth, we'd say if it's down in any of the other areas that we know there's groups working, we report it into those guys. They're hands on the ground there. The other way of reporting it would be to Birdwatch Ireland. So Birdwatch Ireland have a site there that you will report into them, and they will track numbers throughout the country and stuff. So either or, I suppose it doesn't really matter. It's just a good way of kind of calculating numbers. Do we know the numbers of barn owls in Ireland? No. If I was to say, if I take Galway, when we started the project, I think there was 9 recorded nesting pairs in Galway. I think shortly after we put in the work there, we were probably up to about 60, and at the minute we're probably about 70 or 80 sites. So is that down to the work we're doing? No, it's not. It's down to discovery and talking to people, and I suppose boots on the ground, knocking on doors. People like that kind of, you'd often go onto a farm and a person would say to you, what are you here for? And you tell them, like, I'm dealing with barn owls and this is who I am and you can check me out. And they're kind of looking at you with the side eye. And then when they trust you, they say, look, I had one gentleman, he said, I'm 30 years, I have them here. And I said, where are they? It turns out it's the same gentleman that owns the castle that I was telling you about earlier on. But he goes, at 30 years I have barn owls here. He said, never told anyone that now, he said. And I said, oh yeah, I just seen the castle. I thought it might be in it. And I said, where are they? And he pointed up to the door that he walks in and out. Like, so he lives in the castle and he walks in and out this door every day. And he said, see that hole? He said, they're in there. And I said, like, Jesus, I don't think there'd be barn owls in there. I said, can I put a camera there? I haven't seen them now in 2 years, but you can bet your life they're still there. So I stuck in the camera, came back the next day when I was passing by and pulled the camera, and sure enough, they were coming in and out. So they were well used to each other at that stage. Yeah, so it's just one of those things. But I would advise anybody, like, you know, even if there is the big thing where people don't want to report stuff or they don't want to get involved because they don't want to drag people onto their property, you know, like you always get people saying stuff to you like, I don't want people I don't know coming in, whether that's National Parks and Wildlife, the department. We're totally separate of that, and any of the groups that involved in wildlife, they won't just come onto your property. You build a relationship. You get my number, I get your number. If I'm coming onto your property, I'll ring you and say, how are you, Joe? I'm coming up that way today. Do you mind if I pop in for a look? And do you want to come with me? And you'll have a chat and you form a relationship. And as I said, quite often, you know, I could tell you, like, at least out of the kind of sites I'm heavily involved in, I probably have about 20 people that at least once a month would ring me to tell me everything is okay. It's like they're taking ownership of what's going on in their property, and instead of me having to call, they'll send you a WhatsApp and say, I heard this last night. You think that's the chicks? Or here's a video, this lad landed on my line, or this happened, and it goes on all the time. So it's a good community thing for people to get involved in, you know.
Listen in next time for part 2 to hear how farmers can help encourage owls onto their farms.
That's it for this episode of the Teagasc Environment Edge podcast. Thanks to John Carrig, founder of the Barn Owl Project, for joining us on the show.
Don't forget to rate, review and subscribe to the podcast. You can listen on Apple and Google Podcasts as well as Spotify. And for more information, go to the Teagasc website at teagasc.ie. I'm Cathal Summers.
And I'm Deirdre Glenn.
Join us next time for the Teagasc Environment Edge podcast, signpost to farm sustainability.